She was bleeding into the dust. Her gown was little more than a tattered blanket clinging to her frame. Flies swarmed around her cuts as the sun blazed high above the grasslands. And still, she didn't weep. She just gazed at the endless horizon, breathing like each inhale could be her last. Jacob Holt reined his mare to a halt. He often scouted the path for stray livestock that spring, venturing farther than most folks would dare. He thought she was gone. If you reckon this is as grim as it gets, it's just the first gust of a long, dark night. Then she stirred, and a faint voice murmured, "Don't drag me back, I beg you." Her name was Leela. Her lips were parched, her skin scorched by the Montana glare. She looked barely 20, but what stopped Jacob cold wasn't her dread. It was her belly, swollen and heavy, 7, maybe 8 months along. He knelt by the steps. The air carried the scent of sage and blood. He'd witnessed brawls, traps, raids along the route. The marks on her arms looked weeks old, like someone ensured she couldn't flee far, but nothing like this. Her body spoke a tale before her words could. The scars of rope around her wrists, the trembling hand cradling her stomach as if willing life to stay within. When she finally spoke, her voice shattered the stillness like a dropped pane. "My stepfather did this to me." Jacob went rigid. Her eyes locked on his, wide and hollow. No deceit in them, no tears either. Just the raw truth of a woman the world had already cast aside. He glanced at the trail, not a soul in sight, just the long golden sweep of Bitterroot Valley. Wind whistling through the posts, a vulture soaring high above the grasslands. He'd buried a son 10 years back. He'd be her age now, give or take. And now fate had tossed this stranger at his doorstep, broken, and carrying a child not born of kindness. He offered her water. Mercy's a small vessel, but it can hold a life. She sipped slowly like she'd forgotten the act. When she tried to rise, her legs gave way. He caught her before she hit the earth. The child within her stirred once, and Jacob felt it. That single small kick changed everything. Something in his heart shifted. Duty, mercy, or maybe both. He knew the code of the frontier: stay out of trouble, survive, move on. But as he looked at her, he knew he couldn't. That night, under the amber glow of a fading sun, Jacob carried Leela into the shack. He laid her on his late wife's cot and sat by the entrance, rifle across his lap. Out in the distance, a lone wolf cried. He felt it in his bones. Whatever had harmed this girl wasn't finished yet. So he whispered into the shadows, "Who's coming for you, Leela? What did you escape from?" The next morning, the air smelled of smoke and wild mint. Leela woke slowly, blinking like a child seeing dawn for the first time. Her hands clutched the quilt, unsure if she was safe or still lost in a dream. Jacob sat by the hearth, stirring coffee grounds in a dented pot. He didn't speak, didn't need to. The cabin's walls already held more stories than either could voice. When she tried to sit, she flinched. The bruises had deepened to a near black purple. He poured her a mug, handed it over. "Go slow," he said. "Got a rough path if you're thinking of bolting again." She met his gaze, eyes red, but steady. "I ain't boltin'," she whispered. "I'm enduring." That struck him hard. He nodded, like a man who'd muttered those words 100 times himself. They ate in quiet. Silence can mend and it can haunt, all in one breath. Bread, lentils, and the sound of the prairie breeze slipping through the cracks in the timber. By midday, Jacob saddled his mare. He told her they were riding east to find a healer at Fort Benton. He didn't ask who hurt her, didn't push for the name behind that word, stepfather. But inside, something kept churning. The trek across the Marias Plains was hushed. The sky stretched vast, blue and boundless. Leela held her belly, murmuring something soft. A prayer, perhaps, or a vow. At twilight, they paused near a weathered fence post. Jacob built a small fire, careful and slow. She smiled for the first time, faint but true. She said, "You don't have to do this." He shrugged. "Maybe I do." For a moment, the world felt kind again. Firelight on her face, crickets humming low, and the air still warm from the day. Jacob thought of his son, gone 10 years now. He recalled his giggle, the way he would chase the goats barefoot in the yard. He hadn't let himself dwell on that sound in ages. When Leela finally slept, Jacob sat watching the plains fade to black. He spotted movement near the hill. 2 riders, maybe 3, keeping their distance but trailing. He reached for his rifle, eyes narrowing. He knew what that meant. Someone wasn't done hunting her. And out here in the wild, no sheriff would reach them in time. He kicked dirt over the flames, pulled the mare closer, and muttered to himself, "If they want her, they'll have to go through me first." Then he glanced at Leela, sleeping by the dim glow of the lantern, and for the first time he wondered exactly who was chasing her through this boundless land. By the 3rd night, the wind grew sharp and the moon was keen as a knife. Jacob knew they were being followed. The tracks in the dust didn't lie. 3 horses, heavy riders, moving steady, keeping pace. Leela felt it too. She didn't speak, but her hands trembled when she poured water from the canteen. Jacob watched her. Every time the fire popped, she flinched. That kind of fear doesn't come from strangers. It comes from someone who once knew your name.
The next morning, he turned the horses north toward an old outpost near the Missouri River. He wanted higher ground, easier to spot who was coming. By noon, he saw smoke on the horizon, too thick for a campfire. They were closing in. Jacob stopped his mare and looked at Lila. "You trust me?" he asked. She nodded, though her eyes screamed terror. "Then do as I say. If we fall today, the prairie will carve our names in the dust." He hid her behind a pile of straw in the shed and handed her his old pistol. "See anyone who ain't me? You aim and shoot. Don't hesitate. Just shoot." She swallowed hard and took it. The sound of hooves came soon after. 3 men, dust coating them, rode slowly into the clearing. The one in front had a scar slicing across his cheek. Lila froze. That face haunted her nightmares. The man who called himself her stepfather, the one who hurt her now, wanted to end what he began. Jacob didn't need introductions. He'd seen that look before, in every man who thought the world was theirs to shatter. "Afternoon," Jacob said, voice calm. The man sneered. "We're hunting a girl. Purty thing. Big belly. You seen her?" Jacob spat into the dirt. "Can't say I have. And even if I did, I don't chat with men who don't give names." The scarred man leaned forward. "You don't want trouble, old man." Jacob stood tall, hand near his rifle. "Trouble's already found me. Maybe you should ask the wind what happened to the last fool who showed up here uninvited." The silence that followed was heavy enough to slice. Men like these don't come for justice, they come for prey. Then one rider reached for his gun. Jacob didn't wait. A single shot rang out, kicking dust at the man's feet. The other 2 froze. Jacob didn't blink. "You tell your boss, Amos Reed, the girl's gone, and if he wants her, he'll have to bury me first." They turned their horses and rode off fast, dust trailing behind. Lila emerged from the shed, shaking, still clutching the pistol. Jacob took it gently, looked at her and said, "You ain't alone no more. Not while I'm breathing." He turned toward the sunset, jaw tight, knowing this was just the start. If you're still with me, take a sip of that warm coffee, catch your breath, and tell me where you're reading from right now. And if this tale's got your pulse racing, hit that like button and stick around, because what's coming next at the Missouri River, you won't want to miss it. The night before the storm hit, Jacob felt it in his joints. The air went still, too still, the kind that spooks horses. He packed their meager belongings and told Lila they were moving before first light. She didn't ask why, she just nodded and pulled her cloak tight around her belly. They rode along the river trail, the Missouri glinting beside them like a silver thread. Jacob kept glancing back. He knew Amos Reed wouldn't quit. Men like him never do. Sure enough, by mid-morning he saw dust rising behind them. 3 riders again, same path, coming fast. "Hold tight," he said, urging the mare toward an old wooden bridge ahead. The planks groaned under the horse's weight, the river roaring wild below. Halfway across, the wind screamed and thunder split the sky. Lila cried out, clutching her stomach. Her time was near, too near. Jacob yanked the reins, leapt down, and helped her off. He said, "Stay low." He turned, rifle ready, breath even, waiting. The first rider came into view. Then the second. Amos Reed was right behind, his eyes burning with rage and liquor. "We're hunting a girl. Pretty thing. Big belly. You seen her?" The scarred man leaned forward. "You don't want trouble, old man." The silence that followed was heavy enough to slice. Jacob spat into the dirt. "Can't say I have. And even if I did, I don't chat with men who don't give names." Then it all happened fast. Gunfire snapped, wood splintered. The smell of smoke and rain mingled in the air. Lila was sobbing now, doubled over, gripping her belly. Jacob ran to her, hands shaking. "Breathe," he said. "We're almost through." The old bridge held more than timber. It held a choice that couldn't be undone. Lightning lit the bridge like noon. In that flash, Amos raised his pistol. Jacob fired once. The shot went wide, shattering wood near Amos's hand. The second shot hit his arm, spinning him back. Amos stumbled, lost his footing, and the bridge creaked beneath him. He reached for his gun again, but his boot slipped on the slick plank. He fell backwards into the raging river. His scream was swallowed by the storm. The river took him whole. No sound. No trace. Jacob dropped the rifle and caught Lila as she collapsed. She was in labor, trembling and crying. The rain poured, the bridge shaking under their feet. He scanned around, spotted a rocky ledge by the riverbank just yards away. With every ounce of strength left, he carried her there, under the stone, shielded from the wind.
He'd done this months before, years ago, when his wife gave birth alone during a blizzard. He remembered every breath, every push, every prayer. Time slowed to the rhythm of her breathing, each inhale a small triumph against the tempest. By dawn, the storm had exhausted itself, leaving low gray clouds drifting east. Hours later, as the sun broke through, a baby's cry pierced the silence. Jacob looked down at Lila and the child in her arms, tiny and alive. He smiled for the first time in years. If you'd stood beside Jacob on that bridge, drop a like right now. Let's see how many still believe in fighting for what's right. But deep inside, he knew the story wasn't over. Justice might be served, but love in the wild still had one final trial waiting. Morning came soft after the storm. The river murmured below the bridge, calm now, like it had witnessed enough sorrow for one night. Jacob carried Lila and the baby back to the shack. His shirt was ripped, his shoulder wrapped in her cloak. But his eyes were steady, almost youthful again. The child slept soundly in her arms. A tiny hand reached out in dreams, brushing his finger. That small touch changed him. Peace doesn't come cheap out here. It's earned every dawn. It made him believe again. Weeks passed slowly, and the prairie bloomed green after the rains. Lila's strength returned. She laughed one morning while tossing feed to the hens, and the sound filled the yard like a song. Jacob paused mid-chop, just to hear it. He hadn't realized how much quiet had haunted that house until it left. He carved a cradle by hand. No fine tools, just a worn blade and time. Lila watched, smiling softly. "You don't have to do all this," she said. He looked up. "Maybe I do. Maybe it's time I mend what the world tore apart." 2 days later, when Lila could walk again, Jacob saddled his mare. He rode to Fort Benton, a day's journey, to fetch a preacher. When he returned, the old man came with him, dusty and grinning, ready to speak a few words. After a meal under a golden sky, the preacher said his piece. No fuss, no crowd, just 2 souls and a baby wrapped in a patchwork quilt. Before the sun dipped behind the hills, Lila Reed became Lila Holt. Life on the plains didn't get simpler, but it grew softer. Jacob walked the fence with the baby in his arms, a gentle colt trotting beside them. Lila planted wildflowers by the steps. Laughter came easier, and sometimes, when the breeze swept across the fields, it felt like the past finally letting go. Folks in Bitterroot started talking about the man who took in a shattered girl and called her kin. Some called him a fool, others called him a saint. But the truth was plain. He was just a man who chose love over pride. Maybe we all carry a bridge inside us, and one day we decide who crosses. That's the real lesson out here in the wild. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is care, even when the world says not to. To open your door when it'd be easier to bolt it. To forgive when it'd be simpler to walk away. If you were in Jacob's boots that spring day, what would you have done? Would you have turned away or stood your ground for someone with no one left? Take a sip of your coffee and ponder that for a moment. If this story stirred your heart, even just a bit, give it a like. It helps more than you know. And if you want more tales of the Wild West, of folks who found hope where none should be, hit that subscribe button and stay close. Out here, every sunrise brings another story waiting to be told.